Mate 40 here. Wanted to just check in on how much progress you're making decolonializing your life, your bookshelf, your backyard, your diet, your workplace, your bowling club, your synagogue. So the riots against Israel that were dominating many American university campuses over the past few months, right? They come from an ideology that ultimately goes back to Lenin, right? Anti-colonialism, anti-imperialism, or otherwise known as a protest against settler colonialism. And one Australian scholar of this says that invasion is a structure, not an event. Invasion is a structure, not an event. And so the ideology driving overwhelming United Nations support for the Palestinians, as with support for the Viet Cong and with other anti-colonialist, anti-imperialist terrorist movements, is that settler colonialism is illegitimate, and that the way some nation states were founded is illegitimate, and the way other nation states are founded is legitimate. So what's the determinant? Determinant is whether the nation state was founded by white people, European people, moving in and being more effective and efficient than the natives. So the anti-settler colonialist movement doesn't care if non-white people dispossess other non-white people. All right, it's aimed solely at the expansion of European people around the world, and the search for more capitalist markets in the ideology of Lenin is what drove colonialism and imperialism. And so just thinking, this is an extension of wokeness to international relations, right? So the simplest definition of wokeness is that certain groups are sacred, right? Certain non-white groups and marginalized communities, right? So if you're gay and white, right, you're part of a marginalized community. And these sacred marginalized communities should never be publicly criticized. They're exempt from public criticism because of how much they've suffered. And so this anti-settler movement, right, wants to completely redefine how many countries understand themselves, right? There was no United States of America before the Revolutionary War in the late 18th century. What you had prior to the arrival of Europeans were a bunch of indigenous people constantly going to war with each other, slaughtering each other, taking land from each other. Right? No people emerged just out of the earth. But when European settlers moved in, they were more effective, more efficient, more intelligent, more productive than the indigenous. And what happens when you get different people in one location, right? Often you get conflict and tragedy and dispossession, right? One pond scum encounters another form of pond scum in a pond, and they don't tend to live happily ever after, right? One form of pond scum drives out the other form of pond scum. You don't tend to find in nature multiple subspecies just living together in peace. So what usually happens is one subspecies drives out all other subspecies. There have been tendencies along these lines among people as well. So usually the stronger, more effective, more intelligent, more developed, more effective people will win out, and expand over less effective, less efficient, less intelligent people. And so this anti-imperialism narrative that's driving support for Palestinians is ultimately aimed at redefining the United States of America, that this is an illegal, illicit, occupying, settler, colonialist structure. Right? The emphasis is on the structure. Right? The invasion is not an event, it is a structure. And so this woke ideology wants to show that group differences are the result of structure imposed essentially by Europeans. So it's not the plain reality that different groups have different gifts and create different types of communities, that they're going to excel at different professions and different sports. No, it's all because of structure created by Europeans. And so because of the structure created by Europeans, then Africans and some other groups who perform below average, that they've been dispossessed by European structures. And so it takes the emphasis off achieving groups having to look at their own behavior, take accountability for their own decisions, for their own culture, change how they educate their kids, how they operate in their families, in their churches, in their recreation. No, it's all the fault of the white man. And so the same ideology driving the pro-Palestine protests across American campuses also wants to destabilize Americans' conceptions of America. Instead, see it as an illegal, illicit occupation, the imposition of Europeans on indigenous Americans. And so this is an ideology that will be able to explain all low-performing life results by non-white peoples. It's all the result of Europeans' imposed structure. It's not because different people have different gifts. And what about non-Europeans in the structure who significantly outperform Europeans, such as Jews and East Asians? Well, woke ideology isn't particularly concerned with that. But it's surprising how pervasive this ideology is on university campuses and among Western intellectuals. Right? This ideology began with Lenin over 100 years ago, and then it dominated the show trials for the Allies in Germany after World War II, right? So that the greatest sin of the Nazis was their desire for capitalist expansion, imperialism, and waging aggressive war. Right? There were never previously any laws against aggressive war, but now the new post-World War II trials, right, were governed by the Soviet Leninist Marxist narrative of imperialism. And then in the late 1940s and 50s, human rights was a movement, I've learned, that was predominantly supported in the West by conservatives, though there was a substantial Marxist level of support. Then starting in the 1960s, human rights increasingly got taken over by the left, so that now I can't think of any significant right-wing figure in human rights circles. And the Leninist narrative of imperialism just won out with regard to the rules of war, with regard to international humanitarian law, with regard to the operation of the United Nations. And so you had most members of the United Nations supporting the Viet Cong in the 1960s, and then by the 1970s transferring their support to the Palestinians who seized on Viet Cong narratives. Now you see the eruptions on college campuses, but what underlays that is a loathing of European structure. Right? European structure is supposedly responsible for almost all the ills in the world, from global warming to low performance of non-European groups. So it's a very attractive ideology in that it offers a magic key. Right? The magic key is European imposed structures. So you don't want to look at how Europeans outcompeted other groups through their inventiveness, cohesion, daring, intelligence, effectiveness, efficiency. No, you just look at European structures as the ultimate source of all evil, and then the Jewish state becomes seen as an extension of European structures, because the main figures in the history of Israel have been Ashkenazi Jews who have considerable European heritage. And so from the anti-colonialist, anti-imperialist perspective, Israel is an example of a European structure imposed on native peoples and dispossessing them of their lands and perpetuating genocide, just on the basis of its structure of being more effective and efficient and more intelligent. So there are more sophisticated arguments within this anti-imperialist structure, but even someone with a 100 IQ or possibly even a 90 IQ can grasp it. Right? European structure bad, that's the cause of my suffering. So you can understand its emotional appeal.